Hello and welcome to HD's weekly talk show, The Interview, and our special segment, Coffee on Sunday. Supercrat, the man to watch, and one who delivers more than he promises. This is how one can best describe Amitabh Kant, the man behind the G20 Summit. There is a lot that I can say about him, but why not meet the man himself and take him down memory lane? Amitabh Kant here with us today as our guest in this edition of Coffee on Sunday. Welcome to the show, Mr. Amitabh Kant, and thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure.
Let me begin with the G20 Summit. There is a lot, actually everything known about the summit. But let me ask you, the perfectionist that you are, what in your view were the gaps?
Well, there were several challenges. The challenges were in terms of geopolitics. There were several challenges in terms of execution on ground because Prime Minister's vision was really large. His aim and objective was to take it to every state of India. There were huge challenges on bringing consensus on climate, energy, etc. So to do all this, executed on ground, doing all this were huge challenges. I would say that in terms of gaps, merely that we did everything to our best extent possible. One or two states we could have probably got more state cooperation, but this was a great exercise in cooperative federalism. And looking back, I wouldn't like to point fingers at anyone at this stage. I would just like to bask in the glory of the fact that the summit went off very well. The virtual summit has gone off very well. So we would like as a country, India, to bask under the glory of the summit and G20 having been a very successful one for India and probably the most successful in the history of G20.
I'm going to come to the virtual summit in a moment. But when you talk about the Prime Minister's vision of taking it to every state, there is probably a feeling that that was more a populist measure and in one sense unnecessary.
So G20 is essentially held in one city or two cities. Prime Minister's vision was that India's presidency must be a people's presidency. We need to not make it Delhi-centric, but take it to all the states of India. And that means taking it to about 60 cities of India. He then used this opportunity to really improve drainage, sewage, solid waste in several places like Udaipur and the backwaters of Kerala, cleaning up the lakes. So the infrastructure radically improved. He used this opportunity to push the local culture. So every state, nothing was imposed from Delhi. The local art and culture was promoted and marketed. It was not an elitist G20. It was not one city centric. It was not restricted to the capital. It became a people's movement. And that is what many other countries, Brazil, South Africa, will all try and follow in the days to come.
Talking purely objectively, don't you think in that sense or in one sense, it shifted focus from the summit to taking it as a people's movement? And how necessary was that?
It was very necessary, I think. We gave an opportunity to all the G20 participants to visit various states of India. It gave a huge impetus to travel and tourism. Many chains are now going in for fresh investments for new hotels. So it's been a remarkable success story. It was very important that the delegates who come again and again visit different parts of India. And I think they've all gone back as brand ambassadors of India.
I will still come back to what, in your view, were some gaps which could have been filled up.
One gap, of course, as I said, was that we could have got more cooperation from some states. I don't want to get into that. I also wish that in the ministerials, particularly on climate and energy, we could have had greater consensus at the ministerial level, which was not possible, and therefore we had to take it to the leaders level, and therefore at the Sherpa level it had to be tackled. That put a lot of pressure on us. We could have wished that we had a solution to the Russia-Ukraine crisis much earlier, because we had 22 ministerials where we could not find a solution. Eventually we had to find a solution at the ultimate level. But I really wouldn't say that there were many gaps. I would look at it as a very positive presidency which fulfilled the vision of the Prime Minister that India's presidency should be very decisive, it should be very ambitious, it should be very inclusive, and it should be action-oriented.
While on the Russia-Ukraine conflict and coming to the virtual summit which we spoke about, the foreign minister said that somewhere in the virtual summit that got pushed into the background. And also there was no consensus or lack of consensus on the Israel conflict. Would you see that as a gap, or was it inevitable?
We've achieved full consensus on the para relating to planet, progress and people in the G20 statement. We negotiated over close to about 300 hours. We had about 250 bilaterals. We had 16, 17 rounds of different drafts. We got a full consensus. Everybody agreed on that as far as the Russia-Ukraine crisis is concerned. And that was critical. The New Delhi Leaders' Declaration is a 100% consensus document.
Sure, but in the virtual summit.
So virtual summit is not, there's no declaration. Virtual summit is different people express their viewpoints, and there is no formal declaration. It's a summing up by the Prime Minister, where the summing up of the Prime Minister was very consensual, that everybody said there should be no terrorism. Everybody said that countries should not be held hostage to terrorist attacks. So there was absolutely broad consensus on those issues, which was actually summed up by the Prime Minister on the Israel-Palestine issue as well. So I think we were not expecting any overall consensus in the virtual summit. There's no such document was required at all in the virtual summit.
So where would you then put the foreign minister's statement or
The foreign minister's statement was that everybody expressed his viewpoint. But at the end of a virtual summit, the summing up is done by the Prime Minister, but there's no declaration required at all.
Sure, but he did use the word lack of consensus, and he did say Russia-Ukraine was pushed into the background.
Absolutely, because this is a subsequent challenge which has come before this. This is a new geopolitical challenge, and rightly so, that right now the pressing crisis before the world was the Israel-Hamas issue, and therefore rightly the Russia-Ukraine issue, though it was raised by many countries, but the pressing issue was first and foremost the Israel-Palestine issue.
So would you see that as a gap?
Well, I wouldn't see that as a gap at all. I would say that there are global challenges. There's no gap for us. There are new challenges coming up in the world, the new geopolitical challenges. The world has to confront them. The world has to find answers for them. And I think these are challenges which the Brazil presidency will have to evolve a consensus now on the new challenge of Israel-Palestine issue.
Do you think the virtual summit was necessary and called for? Because the first time it was done was in 2020, and that was during the pandemic.
It was very, very good that the Prime Minister had the vision and the foresight to have a virtual summit for two reasons. One is that since our meeting on September 9th and 10th, our New Delhi Leaders Declaration, there was a new challenge. And that new challenge, you had to give an opportunity to the leaders to talk about it. And number two, on the follow-up and implementation of many of our key priorities, the implementation of our 218 odd outcomes was also discussed by the leaders. So I think it was a very good thing that not only are we talking about implementation, but all the G20 countries were talking about implementation.
You know, talking of the new challenge, which of course the virtual summit did underline and take up, the virtual summit was announced at the conclusion of the G20 on ground. So the new challenge was not the driving force, because that happened much later.
That's right. So the intention was that we should take forward the implementation. The G20 is not just an academic exercise. It's an exercise of leaders sharing their views. And that gave them this opportunity to really talk about the new challenges which had occurred. And to my mind, that was really good, because a new challenge had come up. And that challenge was discussed and debated by the leaders.
On a lighter note, the Prime Minister's obsession with the lion, which of course was the trademark here, and even in Make in India, I'm told that it was the elephant which was later changed into the image of a lion. Tell me, you worked closely with Mr. Modi, so.
So, the Prime Minister is very, very thorough, very perfectionist. It's not easy to get his approval, so you have to go to him 3 or 4 times, make different presentations. Then when we were doing the Make in India initiative, we went to him with several
elephant images.
No, we went to him with several presentations. The first presentation we made was based on an elephant, and then he changed it to a lion, and he wanted more dynamics. We brought it more vibrancy. So his inputs have always been of great help and assistance, and I think that lion brought a lot of life into the Make in India magic that happened subsequently.
So back to the obsession with the lion. During G20, we saw lots of lion images all around the capital, at least. So what is it? You worked with him.
The lion, you would have seen many creators, statues, etc., and sculptures in Delhi. I think the NDMC and the Lieutenant Governor brought in many of them. Some of them were the lions. Many were lions, and some were many more. But I think for that you'll have to really. That's the Delhi government took it forward.
But there must have been some silent message of the Prime Minister liking the lion against the elephant, maybe.
Well, there are some elephants also. So you have different animals all around in statues.
Yet on a lighter note again, working with Prime Minister Modi, what were the interesting moments, some interesting anecdotes, and perhaps many more sleepless nights for you?
One is that he's a very tough hard master. He's very clear about his vision, so there's absolute clarity of mind. He makes you work very hard. I mean, I've done Make in India, I've done Startup India, I've done Aspirational District program, and now I've done G20 with him. And in addition to that, I must be one secretary who must have made the maximum number of presentations to him as CEO of NITI Aayog.
More rejection than acceptance?
Many more rejections, because first of all, he wants to understand everything. And if you've not been able to make him understand, he does not have the hesitation to say कि मुझे समझ में नहीं आया, फिर से समझाइए, आप क्या बोल रहे हैं, मुझे समझ में नहीं आया. And that's a great thing for a Prime Minister, because he wants to get into the thick and thin and the nut and bolt. And
how nervous does it make you when the Prime Minister says, मुझे समझ नहीं आया? Do you take it as, am I on the same way?
No. It makes you nervous, but no leader does that. He does it. That's the greatness, that he says that I have not understood what you're saying. I mean, that's a great thing. And then you explain and he understands. And once he's understood, he's very clear about what he wants to achieve. That's number one. Number two is he just doesn't want to take a decision. He wants to look at it from the dimension of what impact it will have on the people. So he's looking at it constantly from the perspective of the common man. And thirdly, how will we implement it? So he wants you to do all that homework beforehand, that we should not take up something and then fail. So do all that homework so that you succeed. And fourthly, he wants integration, convergence, and he wants everybody to work together as a team. I've never seen this before happening in government. So I've worked in the state, I've worked in the central government. This is the first time I found this multidisciplinary focus, the convergence, integration.
Does he frown more or does he smile more?
No, he smiles a lot. He's got a great sense of humor.
How many sleepless nights did he give you?
Well, I think I've had a lot of sleepless nights during G20 because when I took charge, actually, I'd just gone to call on him. I'd left the position of CEO of NITI Aayog. I'd just gone to call on him when I was told that I should take over as G20 Sherpa. I didn't even know what the Sherpa is supposed to do. I came back and later read, and actually I realized that Sherpa is to take his leader on top of the Mount Everest. Now this Mount Everest was really, really steep and very tough because of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. But one thing I would say that I could be very bold, gutsy, I could be courageous, I could take risks because of the stature and standing of the Prime Minister. You know, I could always say that the Prime Minister wanted us to arrive at a consensus. And in the last lap on the Russia-Ukraine crisis, I just told them that if you don't, I said, take it or leave it. If you don't agree with it, ask your leader to talk to my leader. And by morning, we had a consensus. So I could do that because you could pull this off because you had a strong leader. If I didn't have a strong leader, I would not have been able to pull it off. If I didn't have a leader who had a big stature in the global community, I would not have been able to pull it off.
Talking of this Everest being steeper than the one on the ground, how difficult was it to meet the Prime Minister's very high expectation and high level of performance?
Very
How
tough.
tough was it for you?
Very, very tough. Very difficult. Because, first he wanted the G20 to be held in different states. We had to get everybody on sync. We've had 220 meetings. And to have 220 meetings without flaws, not an easy job. And without failures, not an easy job.
How often did you pull out your hair and how much hair did you lose?
So I had to pull out my hair every day, many days, but towards the end, last 10 days, I think none of the Sherpas slept. So last 10 days, I think everybody was awake 24/7.
How many, oh God, never again moments did you go through?
Well, I think I must have done it about almost 12 to 13 times. I felt this was not achievable. I really felt that it's not feasible, but we had to push even more. When I look back, I don't know, I always get this feeling of great satisfaction, great contentment that we were able to achieve it.
What kept you going?
I think what kept us going was the fact that the Prime Minister was very clear. His goals were very clear. He'd indicated that. He wanted a consensus document. His vision was clear. His perspective was very clear. So I think he was motivating us to deliver that, and we kind of worked hard towards that.
Motivating or pushing?
I think both. It's both because he spells out his goal and then he doesn't interfere. He leaves it to you. He doesn't want to get into minute to minute. He doesn't want to get into process to process. He wants you to deliver what his vision is. As an officer, I've been told that this is what needs to be achieved. After that, I've been left alone to deliver that.
Calling yourself an officer is really underplaying your role because you're actually seen as a blue-eyed boy of the Prime Minister.
No, I don't think anyone is a blue-eyed boy. I think everybody is given a task. He's asked to deliver. And I think it's a huge misnomer if anybody thinks that he's totally off the mark on that.
What about being the Prime Minister's go-to person? What about definitions like Amitabh Kant can deliver more than he promises? What do these definitions do to you?
They don't mean a thing to me because I think they have no relevance. I believe in working hard. I believe in working with commitment. Believe in working with passion. I believe that this is India's moment. In the next few years, we need to make the big leap forward.
Where have we faltered? You spoke about the positives, and I take your point, but where have we faltered, and what more needs to be done? There is a lot needs to be done, but what would be your priority areas?
So I think, based on my own experience of NITI Aayog and my work around the aspirational district program, I feel that we need to now focus on improving learning outcomes. We've managed to provide education to children all over, but schools have reached everywhere, but learning outcomes need to be improved. Health outcomes need to be focused on, especially by the states. I think nutritional standards, while central government has done a lot, the states need to really focus on these three. Education, health, nutrition are really critical to long-term growth.
How optimistic are you?
Well, I believe that states will be the key driver of transformation in the coming years. I get great satisfaction from the fact that Uttar Pradesh has seen massive transformation in both infrastructure and in some of these social sectors. So I think similar story needs to be repeated in 4 or 5 other states. And if that happens, because these are the populous states of India, if that happens, then India will really jump up the ladder in the coming years.
The Prime Minister puts in 48 hours in 24. Did you, working with him or under him, have to put in 72?
Well, I think I would say, I don't count it in terms of hours, but I would say that we worked hard. We worked towards outcomes. I wouldn't like to count. I would say that I try and work to deliver results, but I wouldn't say that I'm able to work that in terms of hours. I also like to exercise, I like to play, I like to read, but I like to deliver what I've been given.
Deliver more than promised?
Well, I aim to deliver what I've been tasked with.
Take me through some untold stories, maybe 1 or 2 horror stories, and some happy stories of the G20 Summit.
Well, I would say that one clearly was that when we were discussing the Russia-Ukraine issue, we found that within the G7 there were different perspectives. And at one point of time, when we were negotiating with one of the G7 countries, we almost had a massive argument with one of the Sherpas, and he walked out. We had to persuade him to come back. So he said he'll never again negotiate with India. We were blowing hot, we were blowing cold as a strategy. And secondly, that even when we had got the consent of most of the country, we didn't have a consent towards till the end from Russia. And finally, we had to tell the Russian negotiator that if Russia does not agree, because they wanted a particular line on sanctions, we had to finally convince them late night that if they do not agree, then we have no option but to make it 19-1, and finally they agreed. And then towards the end, when everybody had agreed, there was a bilateral challenge between China and USA, with the China saying that USA does not give visas to them. So for the 2026 G20 Summit which is to be held in USA, they will not issue visas. And therefore, from 9:30 to about 12, we had to sit separately and negotiate between USA and China to get a letter out from USA. That enabled us to finally clinch the whole thing. So a lot of heartbreaks at different points of time, but finally we managed.
Heartbreaks or arm twisting?
Well, arm twisting, we had to be very, I would say there was a lot of, constant we realized that we'd reached the top and then suddenly falling and then climbing back again. And we did that on several occasions. And finally, we managed to see it, whether you call it arm twisting, but we were definitely taking a lot of risks. We could do that. We could be gutsy. We were very courageous, and we had a good team to negotiate.
Were one to turn the clock back, what would you do differently, both in life, personally, professionally, and vis-a-vis the G20 summit?
When I look back, I think my experience of NITI Aayog gave me this feel that I should have worked in the health sector. That's one sector which is critical. And looking back, I really think that I should have spent some time on being in this. But it's, beggars are not choosers. So I never got the opportunity. But I think that's one sector where a lot of more work could have been done.
Beggars, considering you got 3 extensions in the NITI Aayog, and people often ask, what is it that Amitabh Kant has that others don't?
So, I've never in my life ever asked for a job, and very early in my career suffered to a great extent in Kerala, and as a punishment posting, I was made to suffer. A criminal case was launched against me, but and that is for removing encroachments. But I really thought that was the end of my career. So as a punishment posting, they posted me as Secretary Tourism. I was young and I used that opportunity to build Kerala as a tourism destination. So I did everything which was an antithesis of what a normal tourism destination was. I said I'll differentiate Kerala from the rest of the world. So I went back to Kerala's backwaters. I went to the houseboat on which not a single nail is used. I went back to Kerala's Ayurveda, went back to Kerala's traditional cuisine, all this appam and stew which you get now. I went back to Kerala's Kathakali, Mohiniyattam. I went back to traditional Kerala architecture, and we created a great destination called the God's Own Country. So I've used every crisis as an opportunity. I've suffered, but I used that as an opportunity.
Till 2014, till Prime Minister Modi really took oath as Prime Minister, you were kind of unknown. And you were in, as you said, some punishment postings and some... it was also Mr. Vajpayee, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who actually discovered you. So the BJP has been a constant with you, whether it was Mr. Vajpayee and then Mr. Modi. So what is it that the BJP saw in you, and what is this relationship with the BJP? Many call you as BJP's saffron bureaucrat.
No, actually, you see, what happened was that I was Secretary Tourism, and then I was sleeping in my house one day, and it was a Sunday actually, and then I get a call that the Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister wants to talk to you. And it was Mr.
Brajesh Mishra.
And he said that the Prime Minister wants to go on a holiday to Kerala. And, he doesn't want to interact with politicians. He doesn't want to interact with panchayat leaders. He wants to just do some writing. And you will be in charge of it. You will be the local host. And you organize the whole thing. So I did that entire Kumaragam visit of Mr. Vajpayee. And I made him, he stayed there for about 8 or 9 days. So I was spending time with him, lunch and day. And one fine day, I'd taken the Prime Minister to the backwaters of Kerala. And we'd come back, and then it was late evening. And over dinner, Mr. Brajesh Mishra turned to Mr. Vajpayee and said कि इस लड़के को दिल्ली लाना चाहिए, इसने tourism में बहुत काम किया है. And then Mr. Brajesh Mishra called me up one day and said कि have you applied for Delhi? So I said yes. He said, do you know where you're going? I said, sir, I'm told that the Civil Services Board has decided that I should go to the Ministry of Finance. He said, no, you're not going there. You remember that conversation? You're going to Ministry of Tourism. But as soon as I reached Delhi, within I think about 10 days of that, the Twin Tower blast happened. The attack on Parliament happened. There was a war in Afghanistan. There was many challenges, and there were travel advisories against India. And at the peak of that crisis, our hotel were doing just about 10-15% occupancy. So at that peak of the crisis, we launched the Incredible India campaign when Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia all had stopped their campaign. And we brought tourism back center stage. That's how I got the opportunity to work with the then Prime Minister.
2014, Prime Minister Modi.
So, I was CEO of Delhi-Mumbai corridor, and I happened to visit Gujarat for the Dholera project. I interacted, I made several presentations, and amongst all the opposition chief ministers, there was only one chief minister who had this big vision, big perspective when you made a presentation to him. And he said, everybody was talking about 5 square kilometer, 10 square kilometer. Mr. Modi was talking about 700 square kilometer of Dholera, and that was really big. And he put his team to work with me, and that's how Dholera we developed as as one of the nodes and for the Delhi Mumbai. So I met him, and then later I participated in the vibrant Gujarat on a couple of occasions. So I knew him before he came here, but I was really made to work hard as Secretary Industries and later as CEO of NITI Aayog. I had to slog it out.
But what about the BJP being a constant and you being described in some quarters as the BJP's saffron bureaucrat?
I believe that what we have delivered in the last 8 years is remarkable in terms of housing, in terms of water supply, in terms of sanitation. So I'm never negative, I'm always positive.
Optimistic to a fault is what some people say.
Yeah. I never look at the downside. I look at the plus sides. I look at positivity. I look at optimism. I really look at how to transform India in a better way. And I think that philosophy, if you call it pro BJP, so be it. I'm a nationalist. I want India to grow and expand, and I want India to progress. And to that extent, that philosophy is really converges with the Prime Minister's philosophy.
Pro-BJP, to put it mildly, basically saffron bureaucrat, a bureaucrat dipped in saffron.
Well, I mean, if you want to term me that, but I am developmental. I'm totally developmental. I'm totally a civil servant who believes in growth, who believes in progress, who believes in advancement. I mean, that's what I'd say.
No BJP affiliations?
I don't have any people. I don't have a party affiliation. I have a developmental affiliation too.
Person affiliation?
To the government.
Person affiliation in the Prime Minister?
Well, I have great belief and faith in the Prime Minister.
To the key question, will Amitabh get a bigger role? The answer is, of course he will. If I were to ask you, Mr. Amitabh Kant, would you go for it? Will the answer still be yes, of course?
No, I have no ambition. I have always believed in delivering tasks that have been delivered to me. I have never asked for anything. I just do not have ambition.
You have never needed to ask for anything because it's come to you before you asked for.
No. I think that's unfair to say that. It's very, very unfair to say that. So I will read, I will write, I will travel, I have to discover a lot of India.
So if a bigger role comes to you, which I think it will, given your track record, would you say yes, of course?
No, but that's not for you or me to decide. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Do you think accidentally or coincidentally, the G20 Summit helped brand Modi, and would it pay dividends in the 2024 elections? And I underline the word accidentally and coincidentally.
Well, I would say that G20 has been remarkably successful for India. What dividend it pays, we don't look at dividends. We should look at the fact that India has delivered. It should give us satisfaction. Prime Minister Modi, under his leadership, has brought dynamism, energy, vitality to the G20 movement.
So, in one sense, accidentally and coincidentally is what I repeat, it will help brand Modi politically.
I wouldn't like to comment on political issues at this stage, but I would say that it has been administratively an enormous success, and to that extent, it will have a multiplier impact on the G20. Will definitely have a multiplier impact in terms of The leader was the Prime Minister. His vision was there. And to that extent, what India has delivered will have a multiplier impact.
Allow me to quote you. There is no one who has only risen in life. There are bound to be sharp downs, unquote. Apart from the punishment posting Kerala, take me through some of your sharp downs in the recent past.
No, I've had many downs. It will not be fair for me to speak in public. And without having downs, you can't have a smooth rise up. And many times I've been pulled up.
In recent past, you've been pulled up?
Yes, I've been pulled up on several occasions. Let me assure you that no officer has got more firing than I have got. I had the opportunity of working in NITI Aayog, where I had to make many presentations, and the Prime Minister is a perfectionist. He's a hard taskmaster, and he pulls you up. So I've been pulled up on several occasions.
God's own country, Atithi Devo Bhava, Incredible India, Make in India. Tell me the tale of sweat and blood behind these catchy names.
So one is that I believe in working with the best professionals. If you've seen the G20 interpretation of lotuses, if you've seen God's own country, if you've seen the Incredible India campaign, or even what we did in Make in India with the Lion, that was possible because we were working with some of the best creative directors, whether it was Piyush Pandey, whether it was V. Sunil who did Make in India, or whether it was Prasun Joshi. All of them were great creative directors who helped us to translate that into reality.
Talking of Prime Ministers, I did hear some criticism from you or your viewpoint on the functioning of the previous Prime Minister.
No, I have never been critical of any Prime Minister. I might have said that there should have been more decision making. I worked at a time when I had a very tough time, even in Government of India. I had a very difficult time with a Congress minister, and simply because I wanted to work around integrity at that time, and I was not protected. I don't want to get into those issues. And I've always believed that a political leadership must be very decisive and must be very clear. So, at least with this Prime Minister, there's clarity of vision and thought, and you are able to drive. And once that comes in, then it's easy for civil servants to then deliver on ground.
So you're not going to tell me the horror story of the previous government?
But I don't want to get into details of that, but I had a very tough time.
So finally, what are your fun moments, fun times, and what have been the moments where you said, oh God, never again?
I play a lot of golf now, so which gives me a lot of happiness. I do a lot of exercise, which, I believe in sweating. So I sweat it out while exercising.
Moments of, oh God, never again?
Well, I tried to do some tough trekking, and I realized that I've started aging, so you have to live up to your age, and it's important to understand that you are slowing down. So you need to keep pace with that.
Mr. Amitabh Kant, thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and thank you for taking all the questions, actually.
No, thanks. My pleasure. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.